Welcome, everyone. This is Logan Christopher with the Legendary Strength Podcast. And on the line with me today is Frankie Ferries, who I have to say I owe a big debt of gratitude for introducing me really into biofeedback method of training, which we're going to be talking a whole lot about today and all the great things it can do for you. So thanks for joining us, Frankie.
Oh, thanks so much, Logan. I appreciate you having me on.
So for people that are not familiar with you, can you give a bit of a background on yourself?
Sure. I am very much sort of reluctantly in the fitness world. That was never my intention as a child or a young man, and I just kind of stumbled into all of it, and especially this idea about feedback training, about feedback-based training.
Mm-hmm.
So, you and I were talking about, how it is that all of this started. I don't know how far back to start, but I'll start with why I got so interested in it. My father was an amazing athlete. He, when he was 17 years old, he's I think almost 59 right now. So this is a ways back, but he could run the 100-yard dash and 10 flat. Had great hand-eye coordination. And also in the same year he ran the 100-yard dash and 10 flat. He also ran the mile in 4:19. So to be able to do those two things is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Needless to say, I got none of that. but that wasn't really the transformative experience about really what got me interested in biofeedback-based training. What it was is that my father, when he was in his mid-30s, developed something called chronic tophaceous gout. And for those of you who are familiar with gout, it's just uric acid crystals collect in the connective tissue, and they sort of deform your tissue from the inside out. So he had it really bad to where it looked like he had like antlers growing on his heels, on his elbows, and he was just debilitated, and he was just, kind of giant of a man that I saw just laid waste to by disease. And, I was always kind of a fearful, apprehensive kid. I'm like, okay, well, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, so I'm going to make sure that I never have to deal with that. And so at sort of the behest of one of my mentors, I got into corrective exercise really before it was corrective exercise.
Mm-hmm.
There was this book by this author by the name of Physiological, and I ended up buying a couple of his books. The first one was Pain Free. The second one was the Physiological method of health through motion. I think I'm saying that right. And I opened it, and I wasn't all that smart in fitness yet, and when I was reading the first few chapters, and then like, wow, this is really smart. This makes a lot of sense, and it was a little bit over my head. You know how we all react when things are a little bit over our heads. We humble ourselves, and I thought, yeah, this is it. This is what's gonna save me from being in pain later. And what Agassi really focused on was symmetry. You got to make sure that you are balanced from side to side or from front to back. And if you do that, then you're not going to have these pain issues. So I did that. And I remember looking at the second half of the book. The first half of the book was all sort of concept and theory, and the second half was application. And I remember, just being so impressed with the first half of the book, and then I opened up the second half, and it was just a bunch of like static stretching and isometrics, things that I was very familiar with sort of from martial arts, and I thought, man, this isn't going to do anything for me. But I never knew that not only would it do something for me, it would do something to me. And it started a chronic pain process, or I believe it started a chronic pain process. And that happened, now about 10 years ago. And so from there, I developed this pain process, and then I spent every last dime I could trying to get out of pain first, and then when that wasn't going to work, then, I made some more money, and then I tried to learn my way out of it. And then from there, and during that time I saw, some of the best soft tissue therapists in the world, some of the best what are considered sort of neural re-educators in the world. And none of it really worked. There was some progress, but, really the biggest catalyst for this was when my last therapist, who was also my teacher, just gave up and said, I don't think I can help you anymore. In fact, I've actually hurt you, and in good conscience, I just can't keep treating you. And so, man, that just took me to an all-time low, and I was really thinking, some purposeful ways to, exit this life. But, I made a promise to myself. I had this insight. Frankie, you've tried to buy your way out of pain. You've tried to earn your way out of pain, or, learn your way out of pain. I said, but if you're going to earn your way out of pain, or, earn your way out of this life, rather, you're going to have to try and figure this out for yourself. So what I did is I went back to a lot of the source material, and I uncovered some things. It's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And so that's where this stuff really started to germinate. The first time I saw any use of biofeedback, although I didn't know it was that at the time, it was from a Tony Robbins demonstration. You, of course, know who Tony Robbins is.
Yep.
And Tony was having people imagine something bad and then do sort of a twist test to where, you just see how far you can twist and then imagine something good. Everyone was just amazed. But this is the effect that thinking has in our body, and I know you're really into that. Mm-hmm. And it's not just that thinking has a big effect on our body; it's that everything our body does, or everything that our body has done, everything that is done to our body has an effect on our body. We can measure that. Later, when I was at a Z-Health certification in iFace, the instructor, Eric, was showing us doing basically the exact same thing that Tony was doing, except he had us doing it reaching our toes, think about something good, think about something bad. And, in Z-Health, what they really focused on was, at the time, was gait testing. So if you walk better, then it's good for you. If you walk worse, then it's not good for you. And the problem with that is it's not so easy to self-assess. And so I started testing supplements. And instead of, my good buddy, Marty Lott's speech was still using gait, but I said, you know what, I'm just going to try this range of motion testing or this flexibility testing. And sure enough, I was really sensitive to it. It really worked for me. And then just over time, I started applying that to more and more and more things. Of course, we get the idea for testing supplements. I don't know if you've ever been to a applied kinesiologist or clinical kinesiologist, but they do muscle testing. And, of course, the only issue with that is that, it kind of requires someone else to do it to you. And the thing that I love about range of motion testing is that it's something that someone can use themselves. It's an autonomous assessment. So over time, it's just, it was this, realization of, well, why aren't I testing that? Well, why aren't I testing that? Why aren't I testing that? And there's probably some things, even from time to time now, that I think, well, why am I not testing that? And it's just inserting that question into daily life and really paying attention to how your body reacts to what it is your body is interacting with. So that was sort of the genesis of it. And then, one of the last things I applied it to was the weight room. And there was an order that emerged to whenever you start applying these tests to the weight room. And whenever it just so turns out that whenever you test everything in the weight room, that it generates a personal record every single time. And Logan, you're really educated in the fitness world. It wasn't thought possible to have a personal record every time you trained. It just, the Russians and the Eastern Bloc scientists had these fancy periodization schemes. Some of them were, like cybernetic or instinctual or autoregulatory. And it was all based around getting a PR, once a cycle or every competition or twice a year. It was very infrequently. It wasn't really even considered that more could have been done every single time. But it just so happens that when you do test everything, that it can. And I think that's because the body, if we cut ourselves, or if we hurt ourselves over time, it repairs itself. And I think that just speaks to the body's power. And it is, I refer to it as our birthright is better. And it just so happens that we can get a whole lot better than we ever thought we could. So that's the short answer, Logan, right?
Yeah, I think that was a very, very good overview. I do want to clarify for people listening that when you say you can do more in the gym each time, one of the important things about the form of progress is we're not just looking at the maximum amount of weight lifted. If people do that, that's fine, and that may be your goals. But if you're only looking at that factor, then you're going to be shortchanging yourself. You're not going to be getting the great results because our body doesn't progress in a linear type of manner. So we track progress in basically three different factors. You have the intensity, volume, and density.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. Fitness people have a tendency to really focus on, the Russian definition of intensity, which is, percentage of 1 rep max and only putting load on the bar. But we have other athletes that focus, on volume. Like Biofeedback, how many reps can you do? That's another thing, right? And then you have, or they're really sort of density, density oriented. And then you have runners and such that base their progress on how far they can go. So, but the problem with all of those things is that they're all a little bit too narrow. And that's fine if you're only going to compete in one thing. But you can get better in one thing by training all things, more so than you can just training that one thing. It's the way that I like to put it is that better is greater than specificity, or better is greater than specific, and that's sort of a big paradigm shift for people. Big.
Yeah, I interviewed Adam Glass last week, and we talked quite a bit about that topic, just the whole variation of movement and what you can do, and by doing more things, it's going to open up your body, and you're going to be able to do more. So more is better.
Yep, absolutely. Adam, of course, is our top student. He's just really our messenger. Yeah, he's a great interview.
Yeah, we had quite a good time.
So good.
So let me ask you now, what are you in pain still, or has it gone down? What sort of results have you got by following this?
Whenever I started off with my protocol, whenever I was in Z-Health, before I was using these sorts of things, I started off probably on an average of a 6.5 out of 10. And understand what I mean. A lot of people, when they talk about chronic pain, what they're talking about is it hurts when I do this.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's not chronic pain. Chronic pain is it hurts, meaning you're never free from it. Whenever you wake up, whenever you go to bed, it's there. And so my range would go anywhere from, I don't know, maybe a 4.5 all the way up to a 10. And I spent about 4 years in Z-Health, and it went down on average from a 6.5 to probably a 4.5. With my range still being, high 7/8 and then as low as 3.5, something like that. Most of the time right now, and it just hasn't been enough time, most of the time I average, I don't know, half, 1.5, somewhere in there, and it generally doesn't get worse than I don't know, 5 or a 6, and then there are some times when I don't feel it at all. And, you said something very interesting. It's this, you have to understand, I have one of the most crazy pain cases that have ever presented, beyond something that's what's called neuropathic, or there's a problem in the nervous system. I don't believe there's a problem in my nervous system, but I did some really dumb stuff for a really long time. And We can talk a little bit about the nervous system. One of the things that really separates us is that we are not what's considered neurocentric. The reason why this testing works is because of the nervous system. You're tapping into the nervous system, but you have to understand that the nervous system taps into the rest of the body. The nervous system follows the rules of the rest of the body, and the nervous system doesn't make sense unless you understand it and the context of the rest of the body. Have you ever seen that? You've seen Silence of the Lambs and Red Dragon and Hannibal and all those sort of Hannibal Lecter movies, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's one to where Hannibal, and this is kind of gross, but Hannibal basically eats a guy's brain while he's alive, and the guy doesn't feel it. And it's not because he's anesthetized the brain. It's because the brain doesn't have any sensory fibers in it. Mm-hmm. The brain serves the body. And so the limiting factor for getting better is most often the body. Sometimes it's the brain. Sometimes it's the mind. But it's often the body. The body, the rate at which body tissues change is a lot slower than changing someone's mind or those sorts of things. So the older a person is, the less responsive their body is. So it takes a longer time to sort of get them range of motion back, suppleness back, get them out of pain, that sort of thing. And so the longer someone has been in pain, the longer it takes someone to get out of pain. And a lot of times if people have had a pain process of, less than 6 months, with the right movement, it can go away instantly. But once you get into pain processes, which are about a year or more, it takes a little bit longer to sort of reshape the body to where we're no longer feeling that pain. That makes sense? Yeah,
it does. So do you believe in the future you're going to completely resolve your pain issue by continuing on in the same direction? Of course, taking feedback into consideration.
I remember the time when I knew that I would never have pain. I was reading. I was at Denny's. I was eating some so-called shitty food, and I was looking through a Wikipedia entry that just so happened that when I had first read it, or when I had first heard about this information, it was recounted to me incorrectly. They didn't share the data correctly. And then, like I said, when I went back to what was being referenced and I read about it, it was like, oh. And I just knew. I knew right then at that moment that I could get out of pain. I knew it was going to take time, but I knew that I would get there. And with better questions, I would get faster results. And, that's really the limiting factor of the mind, right? It's that just like me, I knew about testing for a while, but I wasn't testing everything. Well, why wasn't I? Well, it was because I didn't think to. I had belief systems that were going against me, that sort of thing. So that was sort of the relative limits that my mind put on me.
Okay. Well, speaking of belief systems, a lot of people hearing about this or looking at for the first time, it flies in the face of, a lot of their past training, having to work so hard in order to get everything. Can you go into a bit of detail of, we talked about the range of motion test. You use that in order to sort of guide what's good for your body and what's not. How does that work?
Yeah, okay. So, basically what you're asking for is the physiological mechanisms behind the range of motion test. It depends on if I'm talking to the lay person or if I'm talking to someone who's a bit more educated in fitness. But we'll start with the laity first. So, I'm often asking people, well, when you feel good, do you have more strength, more range of motion, or do you have less strength, less range of motion? Are you less flexible? Well, when I feel good, I have more of those things. I said, well, when you feel bad, do you have more or less? Well, I often have less. I said, would you agree that every single thing that you do or that is done to you either makes you better or worse? And they're like, well, sure. And I said, so wouldn't it make sense that if you did something that wasn't as good for you, that you would lose range of motion or you would lose strength? And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. And so that's sort of the laity explanation of why this stuff works. If we want to get a little bit more technical, the nervous system, if I have to give a simplistic definition of the nervous system, the nervous system is an organ system that allows for conscious and unconscious sensation and motion. And so one of the things that the nervous system does is, you'll hear about the nervous system facilitating things, allowing things to happen. Movement, for example, the nervous system facilitates movement. But it also inhibits motion. And it inhibits motion. A lot of people who've had sort of a superficial understanding of strength training, they'll talk about how the body keeps itself from displaying its full strength. Mm-hmm. And so that's an example of governance or inhibition. The body is to protect itself from hurting itself by expressing its full strength. If it expressed its full strength, it would basically the muscles would rip the bones apart. That's how strong we are. And once we get our more of our connective tissues and our more rigid tissues up there, man, we can get quite a bit stronger. Because then the body doesn't inhibit it as much. So whenever we do something that moves us into a distress state, the body starts to put the brakes on us, puts the brakes in terms of a lot of things, a lot of different what are called motor quantities or movement quantities, and included in those is flexibility or range of motion. So in general, you do something that's good for you, your body facilitates that motion. It allows for more movement. You do something that is more distressful rather than eustressful to the body starts to inhibit it. And at least two of the sort of the proprioceptors involved in that are like the Golgi tendon organ or the GTO, and then the muscle spindles. There are more than that, but that's that. A lot of people really tune into this idea of proprioception, and so this is a proprioceptive process. This is a nervous system process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's a pretty good explanation, and I hope everyone listening could understand how that works. One thing I'd like to talk about is the idea of corrective exercise.
Yes.
How important is corrective exercise?
Well, if you're doing exercise that is incorrect, or if you are doing things that hurt your body, then corrective exercise is very important. But if you're doing exercise correctly, meaning, and I don't mean in perfect form, I mean exercise that is correct for you. Right. Your overhead press should look nothing like my overhead press because Logan doesn't look like me. We both have one head, two arms, two legs, all that sort of thing. But we have inherited and acquired totally different bodies. And so everything about exercise should be personalized to us. And when it is, all exercise becomes corrective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a big takeaway I got when I first started learning from you that, every exercise can be bad for your body or can be good. It's really going to depend on your body, and hence the testing to figure out what really works for you.
Yeah, if you're having to do a bunch of mobility work or stretching work or foam rolling or, soft tissue work, all this stuff, then consider that what was done before that may have not been very good for you. Mm-hmm. We should leave our workouts feeling better than what we came in. Food is medicine, health is, movement is medicine. Everything you do has the potential to make you better. Just test it, and it will. And it not only just feeling better, but stronger, more supple, faster. All of these, sort of diffuse movement quantities.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit about your experience? Because obviously you've been doing this testing for a long time, and one thing that I've found is after a while of doing the whole range of motion testing, I could begin to feel within the movements themselves whether or not they would test well.
Absolutely. Listen, the end goal of this, I think I've written an article about it, the end goal is not to let testing replace your intuition. It is simply to inform it. It is to reconnect your sensations to your motions. I think had we never been told there's only one right way to do things, or you have to do it this way, I don't think we would have become so disconnected from our sensations. I don't think that we would have become so unnaturally counterintuitive. I think we are all naturally intuitive, and we all naturally know what's good for us. But through listening to sources other than ourselves, we sort of tune out that inner wisdom. This is, I don't want you living your life every 2 seconds touching your toes, but I do want you simply, and you don't even have to try to be aware. It just, how do we pick out our clothes? How do we pick out our food? Yes, you can test it, but there's often that not to give too much of an auditory cue here, but there's that inner voice, there's that inner knowing, there's that inner feeling, right? If I want to talk more kinesthetic about what it is that we can do that would make us feel better. So yeah, it's Gavin DeBecker says, what does he say? Experience informs intuition. I think that's what he says. I think that's what he says. So the testing just simply informs you of things that you may be missing. Because, like me, how many things are you not thinking? How many things are you just doing, knowing that it's good for you, but since you know that it's good for you, you're not even thinking if it might be good or might not be good. Just because it's good right now doesn't mean it's going to be good tomorrow or an hour from now. You talked about the nonlinear relationship of progress, but that's just, nonlinear relationship of physiology. We're always sort of going up and down and in multiple directions, just hopefully trending towards better. And so if we're always doing the same thing is not getting better. It's a guaranteed ticket to worse, guaranteed.
Yeah. One thing that really sort of grabbed me about the whole idea of, listening to your own body's feedback is, in strength training, what we're doing, some people are just doing it to look better, get stronger, but really the way I saw it was a greater body awareness and control. So actually being able to better listen to your body goes right hand in hand with that, and I think it's going to allow the better thing, because not only are you getting better at doing exercises and lifting more, but you're becoming more in tune with your body, which in some ways is an even more important thing to have. So I think there's some benefits, just besides, you can lift more and you won't get injured doing this.
No, it's that reconnection. It's I refer to it sort of as the upward ascending spiral as opposed to the downward descending spiral. Is you are reconnecting your sensations with your motions. You're becoming more primal. You're cueing into that important part of you, that inner guide. And with every, and it's what you referred to, this has been substantiated through motor learning. We whenever we acquire skills, we sort of prune away what's unnecessary, or with better motion comes better sensation, which yields better motion, which yields better sensation, and you just get better and better and better and better. And you've been doing this for a while, and I think you can attest to this, that where you are now versus where you started, very different. And I think you've aspired to always be very intuitive and very, self-driven, but it's those little blind spots that we don't know about that can make all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about the new Gym Movement 2.0 for people that are interested in, going much further with this? And like I said in the interview with Adam, this is foundational for everything that I do. I don't always talk about it because there's a lot of other things to talk about, but it's such an important thing just because, like you said, it informs your intuition. It gets you better in tune with yourself so that you can make better decisions for yourself. As you said, everyone's individual in so many different ways, so you really need to listen to your body as a tool to allow you to get whatever goals you're going for.
Yep, absolutely. This is more about how to do things, not necessarily what to do, although we show a lot of what to do. It's over 4 hours. Our first product was, I think, 37 minutes. And, people, when they first saw it, said, this isn't enough. But a few people really got it. They said, oh, this opens up everything. And so, I take that as my failure. That was our failure, that we didn't sort of open the door wide enough. And so this time, we've created basically a training documentary. Just like I teach, if I'm teaching someone individually, I teach them a little different than I would anyone else. But most people I teach through, a very similar method. It's sort of lecture and lab. There's some whiteboard time, and then there's, okay, let me show you how to apply this. So it's, in the first one, it wasn't really any of the theory or the concept behind it, but we've included a lot of that in there and just all kinds of different examples. Basically we've broken down movement or broken down exercise into these, broad categories, and then, hey, have you tested this? Have you tested this? Have you tested this? It's just a compendium of a lot of different things that we talk about, how to test towards fat loss, how to test towards muscle gain, how to modify all of these exercises that you're already doing so that you're not shaping yourself after exercise, but you're shaping your exercise after you. And when you do that, you have less likelihood to get hurt and more likelihood to have progress like you've never had before.
Yeah. Like the one clip in there where it has a thing, Frankie is not dancing in this. I laughed pretty hard at that.
Right, yeah.
Because that's the point. It doesn't look like an exercise that most people would be doing, but for you, that's the perfect exercise to be doing at that moment, and it works really well for you. But it looks kind of off to other people.
Yeah, man, it looks funky. A lot of things that Adam does too, looks kind of funky. And Logan, you do some amazing things with your body. But, a lot of those things you've adopted, you have this encyclopedic knowledge of movement, but a lot of things you've adopted come from a former time. And so when people see, kettlebell juggling or, weird side pressing or hand balancing or anything like that, it looks, well, what muscle does that work? That sort of thing. Right. But the thing is it makes you better. It makes me better. And showing those things, those silly things that I do, just helps people to say, hey, I don't need to do that silly thing, but it's okay to do my own thing. And that's really what I want the takeaway to be is, look, I don't want you to get better because there's something wrong with you. I want you to get better because you can. And the way that you are going to get better is by doing your own thing. And what the movement is all about, what we're all about, what you're all about is, hey, man, let's do our own thing, but let's do it together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you were saying, I got that original product, and I had a lot of questions after that, so I went and trained with you guys in person, and still, it's like our movement, it's evolving, getting better all the time. So this is by far the most comprehensive teaching of that, even better than training with you back, I don't know, that was several years ago. It's really, at this point, I'd say it's pretty clear and easy, and I have to say I've been doing it a long time, but watching through all the videos again, and I did go through them all, I relearned a couple things I had forgotten and have added some small tweaks that should help me get even better as I move forward.
Yep. I'm really happy that you said that. Yeah, we have come a long way. Of course, if you're a living system, you're always adapting, you're always growing, and so that we have a saying: the first rep is the worst rep. And what you went to was our very first certification, and I liked it, But you're good. Right. And in the 3 years since then, the product that we put out, which is a distillation, but just a sampling of that, is even better than what it was then. And so now our level 1 course is, really, really cool. So we're working on it, man. We're working on it. But we're not trying.
It's just naturally getting better.
There we go.
That's awesome. Well, so I will have links to this course. It's a bit higher priced than some other things, but it is worth it. The value is definitely there. It is worth it because, like I said, this is one tool you need to learn how to use, and we've spent years learning how to use it even better, and so it's a distillation of all that information. It will give you so much to work with, and then you can apply these other things and ideas, and it all comes back down to this foundation. I'm also offering a bonus with this, so all you have to do is order through the link on the website and send me your receipt, and I'll hook you up with that. That's like $197 value. Some great additional information as far as the biofeedback training as well, and how I specifically use it myself, just to give you more data to pull from so that you can better work for yourself and get the goals you want to get.
That's cool, man.
So thank you very much, Frankie. I had a lot of fun on this call.
Thanks, Logan, man. Appreciate you having me. Glad I got to talk about it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you have any questions, be sure to shoot them to me, and look forward to next week's podcast. Thank you, everyone.